Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This week on the podcast, I have Ari Tolwin. Ari is the founder of Numilk, which is arguably, I've tasted it. It's amazing. It's probably the best plant-based milk I've tasted because it is not like the regular plant-based cartons that you can get in your supermarket. It is a machine that fresh squeezes hemp or almonds or oats or anything you want into fresh plant-based milk. Originally, they were in supermarkets. They had a massive kiosk, and that's where I tasted it. And now they are pivoting into smaller machines that could fit on your countertop in the kitchen. He was recently on Shark Tank, where he landed a massive deal with Mark Cuban. And I wanted to have him on to discuss everything from his entrepreneurial journey to being on Shark Tank and Numilk and what he sees, what his vision is for the company. And yeah, it was a blast really learning. I've been a Shark Tank fan since the beginning of COVID. My wife and I binged the whole show and I saw him on the show as well. So it was interesting to get a little bit behind the scenes of what it's like being on Shark Tank, what it's like pitching, the whole prep leading up to it. So really fascinating stuff. And I'm sure you guys are going to love it. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Let me introduce this week's guest, Ari Tolwin. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Ari Tolwin, how you doing, sir?
Pretty good. How are you, Roy?
Not too bad. Yeah, we got it done. I'm happy you're on. There's a lot to talk about. I hope we can squeeze it all in the time we have. All right. So first I heard of you. I guess I can take it back a little bit. I lived in Brooklyn for a long time, and I would go to Whole Foods and I would see this machine. I'm like, this is a very cool machine. What is it? And I bought from it, and honestly, it was, by far probably the best almond slash oat milk I've ever had. And I was like, all right, cool. And I bought it a few times. And then fast forward, maybe a year later, I saw you guys on Shark Tank. I was like, oh, this is the guy. All right, that's cool. So that kind of came together. But so you're currently the founder of Numilk, right? So there's three things I guess I want to talk about. One is obviously you want to know a little bit more about you, your journey as an entrepreneur. Second, Numilk, and third is Shark Tank. And, not in any specific order, but we can just get into all of it. Before you were the founder of Numilk, you were the CEO of Happy Tree Maple Water, right?
Yep.
How did that company come about?
Yeah. So I was living in New York and I was working at McKinsey, which is a consulting firm. And I have a brother who lives in upstate New York, in the Catskills at the time. And he had a homestead, an organic homestead, where he grew most of his own vegetables and his own eggs. And he also made maple syrup. And I visited him over a weekend. And the way that you make maple syrup, I didn't know this, but the way that you make maple syrup is you actually tap a water from the tree. And then you take the water and you boil it so that the liquid all evaporates, the water all evaporates, and then you're left with a high concentration of the maple sugar. And that's what maple syrup is.
Okay.
And so I was like, wow, I had no idea. And I tried the water. I was like, can you try the water? And he's like, yeah, of course. It's delicious and it's super healthy. And so immediately I'm like, I live in New York City. I drink coconut water. It's exploding in popularity. There's water that comes from maple trees and it's delicious and super healthy. It just didn't make any sense to me. It's like, this is like right here. And I've never heard of this. No one knows about it. And so doing a little bit of research, I found that there was a really beautiful tradition in South Korea today and Native Americans in the past where they would use maple water as a cleanse. And they would go into sweat lodges that they built for themselves. They would eat salty snacks like dried fish or salted fish at the time was the salty snack. Yep. And they would drink up to gallons and gallons of maple water in the spring. They believed that it had special healing properties because they associated the time that the water would run with the rebirth of nature. And it's actually true. The reason that trees are dormant in the winter is not because it's too cold for them. It's because the water doesn't flow to the tree. So much like our blood carries all of our nutrition through our body, the sap carries all the nutrients to the tree. And so as soon as the ground thaws, the tree comes back to life because the water is carrying all of its nutrients.
Oh, wow.
So long backstory. but I fell in love with the product. I left McKinsey to bring it to market, and I worked on that for a couple of years, growing to national distribution, but never really achieved the sort of like sustainable from a business perspective success that I wanted. And then when ultimately I had the idea with my co-founder Joe Savino for Numilk, we closed down Happy Tree and started Numilk together.
Did you have any idea how difficult the beverage space is before you went into it?
Well, that's one of the things that drove us to Numilk. So no, I had no idea. Okay. And I went to business school. And in business school, you learn about concepts like the power dynamics of an industry, and it's very theoretical, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get into like distributing a perishable beverage, and it's not theoretical anymore. We had one distributor, I'll leave out their name, but anyone in the industry could probably guess. We had one distributor who we launched with a retailer in the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. We went through this distributor, and we had sent them like 4 or 5 orders before we finally got our first check. And having worked through all the bill backs and promos and other sort of like hidden charges that are very, very typical in the industry. So no, I had no idea. I learned quickly. And one of the amazing things about Numilk is that we thought when we went into Numilk, and there's obviously a little bit more to it, but we thought as we went into Numilk that we could sort of be above that fray. Whereas the shelf is a very undifferentiated place controlled by the retailers. If we can bring equipment, food tech into the picture, then we could have our own space and be differentiated, and not just a passing differentiation, but differentiation that's built on actually offering a better product to the consumer in terms of taste, in terms of quality, in terms of a reduced environmental footprint. And we thought that we could do that in a way and keep it long term.
But didn't you think? So, for example, I also had a beverage company in New York, and getting stuff on shelves is brutal. And then you were like, you know what? Getting things on shelves is very hard. Let me go put this massive kiosk into places. That's a huge idea. How did you think you were going to accomplish that?
Yeah. So part of the way that we got to Numilk, my co-founder and I, is we thought about what we loved in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And our early answers were like, I love Gigi Dave's kombucha, and I love the sauerkraut, and and what we realized is that everything that we thought we loved was really just short term. It was what we were drinking or eating for the year, for this season. But we realized we really love the fresh peanut butter grinders, and we really love the fresh juice machines.
Yeah.
And that's never changed for us, right? I've never gone to the store thinking that I want to buy some fresh OJ, but I got waylaid because Tropicana was on sale. It's just a different product, right?
Doesn't happen.
And so we went to Whole Foods. At the time, Ellie Truesdell was a local forager in Whole Foods. Mm-hmm. And we asked Ellie one question. We said, what percentage of the peanut butter grinders, what percentage of the peanut butter category do the grinders take? And she said 25%.
Wow.
And we thought, 25%, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
If you could take 25% of the plant-based milk category, it'll be fantastic. And so we started to develop the pitch from there to Whole Foods. And then we started asking them, we started looking around the store, and we started noticing that there were a lot of promo end cap displays in Whole Foods. And we kind of thought, like, these can't be selling that much, right? Like, you could have 3 stacks, end caps of like, tortilla chips, right? How much could the third one really be selling? And so we developed a pitch to Whole Foods around, give us your worst performing end cap in the store, and we will outperform it. And not only will we outperform it, but we'll outperform it with something that's going to be sticky to customers, differentiated, something unique to customers. And we told them that we would do 100 bottles a week, which was $500 of revenue, which was a little bit more than our sense of their worst performing end cap in the store. We talked to some store managers. We said, hey, how much is this? I'm talking about like the far corner of the store. And how much is this end cap doing? A few hundred a week. Okay, we do 500. We're good. So we built our first machine, and we were ready for testing. So we had the first machine built, and we were ready to test it. And then Amazon bought Whole Foods. And Ellie came to us and she said, I love working for Whole Foods. I have no interest to work for Amazon. I'll see you later.
No.
But thankfully, Ellie is wonderful. And she introduced us to her successor, the person that would be taking over her role. Mm-hmm. But because of that uncertainty, we wanted to establish facts on the ground. We wanted to get the machine in the store as quickly as possible. And so we essentially said, we're ready. When can we put it in the store? And so we put the machine in the Paramus Whole Foods. We did 130 bottles our first day in the store. We did 170 bottles our second day in the store.
Wow.
I remember the store manager coming over to us with sort of like wide eyes, being like, every single person in the store has Numilk in their cart.
That's a great feeling, right? As an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah. It was an amazing feeling. And then day 3 was a Sunday, and we did about 60 bottles by noon, and the machine broke.
Oh.
And so I'm looking at the machine. I'm like, oh, well, that was a great party last 2.5 days. And there's literally, the machine is like so broken. I have the sides open, like the screens all like, and customers are like, one customer I remember in particular is like, well, can I just make one more bottle? And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, like this is like a car smoking on the side of the road. Like, oh, can we just go on one more road trip? No. And so we spent the next 6 months, Joe and I, basically, I would be there during the day, massaging the machine, for lack of a better term,
to
try to get it through the day while also managing customers so they would not necessarily realize it was broken.
And how many locations were you at that point?
So we were one location for Paramus Whole Foods. And then Joe, my co-founder, who's more technical, would show up around 10:45. The store's open at 11. We'd load up on snacks and coffee, and then we'd work, sometimes till 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning to fix the machine. And then I'd be back. I'd get a hotel nearby, and I'd be back at 7:45 to manage the machine and manage customers again throughout the day. So we ran that for about 6 months, which was about how long we had in the gas tank, personally.
I mean, that's 110%.
It was crazy. I was living in the store essentially.
But I mean, I don't know if it's a blessing in disguise, but did you learn a lot from that experience?
We learn from every experience. In my mind, experience is currency, and if you're not learning from it, then you're wasting it. So yeah, we learned from every single experience, and ultimately, it started to inform decisions that we didn't make until 2 years later, but it was the beginning of that decision. So about 6 months after sort of managing that machine, we had a second version ready. We put the second one in the store. We took the first one out. And then it was much smoother sailing with the kiosks for at least another 1.5 years up until when COVID hit.
Yeah, COVID was I can imagine. I mean, at what point did you know you had a superior product? Because I'll be honest, like when I drink, let's say almond milk or oat milk, probably oat milk for the most part, it's not something I drink as a standalone product. I'll add it to my coffee. I'll add it to cereal when I sometimes eat cereal. But this, I just drank it as a beverage, as if it was a orange juice or a kombucha or whatever it is. It was that good. But that's not something I realized only after I bought it. And I was like, okay, it feels fresh. It feels like just something I can enjoy as a standalone product. Did you know that from the beginning, or was that something you just realized later on, maybe with customer feedback,
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. And even, I appreciate it because a startup is hard. And that's the only currency that you can live on within the process of building a business. What I mean by that is I don't make a high salary, right? And so how do we survive, right? And so we survive on positive feedback from customers.
Yeah.
And so every time I hear something like that and I appreciate it, I get like, okay, I'm good for another day. I'm good for another 2 days, right?
Yeah.
So we had a strong, opinion, but taste is always subjective. So we never knew for sure. And when we first started, we were first playing with our first machine before it was in the store. Initially, we weren't grinding the nuts fine enough. Our mill wasn't getting the particle size on the nuts ground down fine enough. And it had like a really fresh taste, but like it wasn't it.
Yeah.
And then we found an innovation with the mill to get the particle size down fine enough. And I remember we tasted it and we looked at each other and we're like, all right, yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
Because up until then, up until then we had this idea and we were like ready to talk with Whole Foods. Like we were already like doing it, but like the product didn't taste good because we weren't getting the particle size down enough. And so it was like kind of chunky. Not chunky, like, but just it didn't have a good mouthfeel.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing product. So, all right, you produce Numilk, you have the kiosks. Pre-COVID, how many locations were you at?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we had a dozen kiosks in a Whole Foods in 2 regions, the Northeast region and the North Atlantic region. Mm-hmm. We had gone into our first North Atlantic region store in Sudbury, Massachusetts, right before COVID hit. And we had other stores lined up that we were going to go into. We had other stores in the Northeast or East region that we were going to go into. We were going to finally go into some really good stores in Lower Manhattan in the Northeast region. And then we were also going to launch with Whole Foods Florida. And we were also going to launch with Kroger, their King Supers banner in Colorado. And then we were going to launch with Whole Foods in Southern and Northern California as well. Basically this was all planned for the summer of 2020.
Oh, wow. And then COVID hits. What happens?
Yeah. So COVID hit and I went into the store. We go into the grocery store and we see that the peanut butter grinder is turned off and the orange juice machine is turned off and the coffee grinder is turned off and the bulk bins are closed, meaning the ones where you take like dried mango and whatnot. So I right away went to our investors and we said, machines are still on, but I don't know how long for.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, about a week later, we got an email from Whole Foods saying, you got to turn off all the machines. And so we were able to work out with Whole Foods that we would turn off the machines, but we were able to pre-make bottles before the store opened and merchandise them. And so we did a little bit of that. And, it wasn't really meaningful revenue, but it was meaningful, I think, to our customers because we got a lot of emails constantly from our customers. And it was also meaningful to the team because, you have a team and we have field technician and it's like, oh, you have, no job or a little job. There's actually a really big difference.
Yeah.
At the same time, our investors who are, there's always 2 types of investors: investors who know your industry, and then there's investors who are just financial investors. So our investors who knew the industry were very supportive of everything that we were doing. And our investors who were financial investors would say things to us like, well, I can buy salmon at the fish counter, so why can't, we install more Numilk machines? Like, what planet are you on? Is there no open where you live? And then they would say like, well, why can't you have a meeting with the health department and explain to them that it's okay? And I remember at one point, I'm like, guys, the peanut butter grinders are gone. They're not turned off. They're not in the store anymore. The juice machine is not in the store anymore. The Numilk machine is still in the store.
Yeah. We actually had, so I can relate. We had I was working on just a little startup pre-COVID where essentially we were trying to eliminate cups, reusable cups in coffee shops. So you would bring your own mug and it would connect with the coffee shop. Never mind. And we got a little bit of money. And as soon as COVID hit, you can't bring in your mugs anymore. That was gone. So instantly that company was just dead.
Yeah, it was. And COVID, I have a lot of friends in the space, as you can imagine, so I had friends who had a vending machine business, fresh salads going into offices, so that they got crushed. I had friends who had a business where they grew mushrooms in grocery stores called Smallhold, really super cool stuff. They pivoted to make small units for home, which is similar to, we didn't get there yet, but similar to Numilk.
Yeah. I can't wait for that machine.
Yeah. The countertop machine, I guess we'll just pull it out of the bag now, but the countertop machine. So I alluded to initially our experience in the Paramus store with our first machine and all of the maintenance and all of the challenges around having it operate, 24/7, whenever the store is open. And so we were on our 5th version of the machine when COVID hit. We actually installed our first 5th generation machine when COVID hit. And it was a significantly improved machine. But our experience over our first 2 years said to us that this was always going to be a little bit of a slog, meaning to have a consumer-facing machine that made a food product and stayed clean, available 24/7 when the grocery store was open was always going to be very, very difficult. And so we had already started thinking about, can we make a more simple countertop machine before COVID hit? And then when COVID hit, it was like, we don't need to think about this anymore because it's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so we had a little bit of like rough sketches when COVID hit of like, hey, here's how a countertop machine would work. And then when COVID hit, it was like, okay, this is the direction we got to go in. There was clarity to us, and eventually clarity to our investors. But right away, we didn't really care.
But that can be easy, right? Because you're taking, I mean, for people who haven't seen this kiosk, it's really big. It's what's the size of it?
Yeah, so our latest kiosks were 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall, and 2 feet deep.
And you're essentially taking 4 and 6 to whatever the size of the machine is now, but it's something that can be on your kitchen counter. So it's relatively small, maybe a little bit bigger than, I don't know, an espresso machine.
Yeah, so it's about 7 inches wide, it's 17 inches tall, and it's, I think, 9 inches deep. So we're taking something that's, 4 by 6 is 24 times 2, 48 square feet, and we're making it a square foot.
It can be easy, like just as far as all the technology that goes into all the components, again, making sure that everything's running smooth. How much have you put into that over the last, I don't know, year and a half through COVID?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't easy, but we have a few things going for us. The first is we have an amazing engineering team. And one of the things that we did when COVID hit is we actually grew our engineering team. And so I know obviously a lot of companies were forced to downsize, but we took the opposite approach, and we wanted to bring everything that we had been outsourcing, we wanted to bring it in-house. And so we started hiring engineers when COVID hit. We haven't stopped yet. We have an amazing engineering team. And that was the first thing that helped us. The second thing that helped us is you don't really have a choice when you make a countertop appliance. And so everything that was bells and whistles in the kiosk went out the door, and we just focused on what the machine needs to do, which is make the best plant-based milks, shakes, lattes, and and other varieties of milk, right? Chocolate milk and everything else, right? And so the grocery store machine has a built-in clean-in-place system. It's one of probably the most complex part of the machine. It automatically cleans and sanitizes, rinses throughout the day, and so that's gone. The grocery machine had a little fridge where we can merchandise and people can grab and go. That's gone. The grocery machine had a chilled water tank and 3 different water filters, including UV filter. All that stuff is gone. Had remote internet connectivity, a marketing screen. All that's gone. And then it had a much larger ingredient capacity. It had basically 480 could hold ingredients for 480 quarts of milk. The countertop is just a single pouch system. Mm-hmm. So the 2 things that helped us, number one is we grew our engineering team internally. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, because we knew we had these constraints and we didn't really have a choice, it helped us focus on what was important and get rid of everything else.
Was this something that in the back of your mind, even maybe when you started out a few years ago, you're like, I think down the road, this is something we can build? Or is this out of necessity due to COVID, you just had to pivot and you're like, all right, this is what we need to do. This is how we reach the masses and still grow the company?
Yeah, we always thought about, it's a great question. We always thought about a countertop machine. We liked the grocery store approach initially because we thought that it would give us a little bit of an easier path to market. It is a little more tangible to us. We were familiar with it. Home is tough. Home is really tough. And we decided to go after the grocery market, but we always thought about the countertop, and we always sort of liked the countertop opportunity. But we decided initially to go after the grocery market. And, in hindsight, I don't know, I don't know what the right or wrong answer was at the time, but clearly when COVID hit, we had a lot of clarity.
Did you study Juicero a little bit?
Yep. We were familiar with Juicero, and that drove our decision a little bit based on what we were hearing in the investment community. So, Juicero failed not because of a Business Insider article, in my opinion. In my opinion, Juicero failed because I could go to my bodega and get fresh juice for $4. So I don't need to buy an $800 appliance with an $8 pouch. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, that's why Juicero failed. It was twice as expensive and it wasn't necessarily any better quality. So for me, it comes down to what's the value proposition. The reason that Juicero was so expensive is because they were shipping these pouches that were highly perishable all over the country.
Yeah.
And so when you go back to, why Happy Tree Maple Water wasn't successful and why the perishable beverage business is so difficult, Juicero was like, we're going to make it twice as difficult on ourselves. We're going to send refrigerated items to everybody's houses, right? In contrast, Numilk is very different. Numilk, the pouches are shelf stable. And so we're able to actually deliver value to the customer. So if you want to get a higher quality plant-based milk in Whole Foods, brands like Elmhurst or Malk or Three Trees, you'll pay between $5 and $7 a quart. Our Numilk pouches to make a quart of fresh almond milk, which is still better yet than those other brands. Those other brands are great, but they're not raw, right? And they don't quite have the ingredient quality that we have. Those pouches from Numilk will be $3. And so in contrast to Juicero, which in my mind, in my opinion, had a questionable value proposition from the beginning, Numilk is able to deliver both in terms of product quality and in terms of price.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I first saw Juicero, I was like, I don't know, I wasn't sold. And when I saw your guys' Kickstarter, I was like, sold. Like this is something I would want in my house 100%.
Yeah, the other thing that helps us is Juicero is limited to just juice, obviously. We have a much more broad lineup of use occasions. And so we have all the plant-based milks you can imagine, but we also have lattes. We have a chai tea latte. We have a matcha latte. We have a cold brew latte. We also have protein shakes. We have vanilla and chocolate protein shakes made with a hemp base. And so the protein is coming from hemp. It's a very good protein source. Then we have seasonal stuff. We have pumpkin spice. We have vegan eggnog. We have vegan formula in the work.
All right.
So there's a much broader, in the plant-based space, it's simply a bigger category than juice in general. So that's helped us as well.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Shark Tank. When did the idea start to formulate, like, this is an opportunity maybe we should take advantage of? And then how was it pitching on the Shark Tank?
Yeah. So, whenever you start a business, I'm sure you had the same experience as I do. Everyone's like, you should go on Shark Tank. You should. Yeah. I'm like, thanks, Captain Obvious. So you always hear, go on Shark Tank, go on Shark Tank. And we never really thought about it. And part of the reason we never thought about it is, we're busy doing what we're doing. But COVID was a pause for everyone. And we got busier during COVID. But we also thought about new things. And we thought, hey, we're going to launch this countertop machine. We're getting away from the grocery store that we know. We're going to the coffee shops. We're not really familiar with them. We don't have experience there. We're going to go into homes. We don't have any experience there. So Shark Tank sort of became a little bit more potentially beneficial to us. Mm-hmm. And so we simply applied on the website. And with something like Shark Tank, you think, I got to know somebody, right?
Yeah.
How do
I would think.
Yeah, that's what I thought that too. So, but it was the kind of thing where like we were talking about it, and I was like, why don't I just at night, my day's done, I'll just do it. I'll apply on the website. So I applied on the website, and I don't remember. I think it was you uploaded maybe like an investment deck, and you answered like 10 or 15 questions, basic stuff. Maybe it took a half hour or something like that. I don't remember exactly the first application. The reason I don't remember the first application is turns out there's 1,000 applications.
How many did you have to go through actually?
It's a 6-month long process of application beginning to end till the day before you pitch.
Wow.
So I submitted that first online application and I forgot about it because it's done, right? I'm like, I did my part, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And then a week later, I got a phone call from a human being. And as soon as I got that phone call, I was like, oh, we're in. And the reason I thought we're in, because I think we actually have a really cool product that resonates with a lot of people. And I watch enough of Shark Tank to know that they like food, they like products, right? So as soon as I got that phone call, I started to get really confident in terms of our chances to get on. But it was literally a process from that moment until the day before we pitched. And so at the end of the day, they're making good TV. And so if they don't think that you're going to go on and make good TV for them, they're not putting you on. It doesn't matter where in the process you are. And so the day before you pitch, you actually do like a dry walkthrough with the producers. And I don't know this for a fact, but I imagine that if you fumble everything, you're not ready to go on. You're not going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always, because I'll be honest, I've never watched the show up until COVID. And then I binge watched the whole thing. My wife and I, we would watch like 6, 7, sometimes 10 a night, just binge watch the whole show. And, there's things I love. And then there's things that I'm like, all right, this is obviously a little bit of theater, a little bit of, business. And then also I hate the edits that they do sometimes where like the faces don't match the reactions. They just put those together. But again, that's reality TV. What are you going to do? But how much, as far as prepping and doing that work, how much do they tell you to do versus how much is it just authentic and you doing that? Like, do they tell you, hey, be a little bit theatrical? Hey, maybe like go over the top, scream, do all this stuff? Or is that just you wanting to put on the best pitch possible?
Yeah. So the only thing that's practiced is the initial pitch when folks walk into the shark. That's the only thing that's practiced. It's the only thing that is scripted, if you will. And you can go off script also if you want. And sometimes people do. But it's the only thing that's practiced is, hi, my name is Ari Tolwin. I'm Joe Savino. We're from New York City, and we're seeking whatever. I could probably say the whole thing right now still.
Yeah.
With that being said, they give you general tips. Most of the people are on TV for the first time. And so they say, bring as much energy as you can bring. Mm-hmm. Right. But besides for that, it's completely free flowing. And as much as they can or can't control the contestants, they have zero control over the sharks.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The sharks, they do. So the first thing that surprised me about Shark Tank is you go in there, you say your pitch, and on TV, it looks really organized, right? It's like everything is like calm. It seems right. They all start talking at the same time. And it's just chaos because, Lori's not like, oh, Mark, go ahead, ask the first question. That doesn't happen. They all have a question by the time you're done with the pitch, and they just throw it out there.
Yeah. How nerve-wracking is that?
I actually love it personally.
You like the chaos?
I love the chaos. So I really liked it. We had obviously a little bit of a unique experience because we filmed during COVID. And so we had quarantined for 2 weeks in advance. And so that did two things for us. The first is we were very prepared. Okay. I was really prepared. I knew from prior episodes, specific investment deals that I could reference and things that people said that they do and don't like that I could reference and talk about with them. That was the first thing. So we were very, very prepared. The second thing is Joe and I were like, we're about to go on national TV. We're stuck in our hotel rooms for 2 weeks. Maybe we should do something healthy. And so we intermittent fasted. And so we were eating only from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., essentially 2 meals a day. And we were separate, but we were trying to also exercise as much as we can in our hotel rooms, right? And on the day that we filmed at 11 a.m. And we didn't think that we should eat breakfast because, we're going on Shark Tank today.
Yeah.
We thought we're intermittent fasting and we're going to keep going. And so like 10 minutes into the pitch, my body was like, hey, there's no more sugar down here.
You just had like a blood sugar drop?
Biggest crash. I had the biggest crash I ever had in my life.
Wow.
And so I was like, we just like kind of like work through it. But I never had a crash like that before in my life.
Wow.
Literally 10 minutes.
With all the adrenaline, all the excitement, I can only imagine.
Yeah. It was literally like a switch flipped, and we were like zombie-like for the last hour. We were out there for a long time. Our pitch was very, very long. We were at 90 minutes in total, and so
wow,
10 or 15 minutes in, the crash hit me, and then the rest of the time was a struggle.
You're just on automatic. Yeah, that's the thing, right? On the show, it's like 15 minutes maybe, but the actual thing is 90 minutes. So they edit a shit ton of it.
Yeah, they edit it down. And to your point, and I also didn't love this, they'll put expressions with questions that didn't actually match up, right? They'll just try to craft the story that they think is the best story.
Yeah.
And at the end of our episode, we were negotiating, and I didn't really follow this, but I saw after the fact there's these Reddit threads where people talk about the episode, and people were like, oh, why didn't Ari, negotiate better? He was just like, and I was thinking to myself, like, I was like brain dead. Like, why did I negotiate better? I needed to get the heck out of there, have a glass of water and like sit down. The other thing that was really tough physically was they mark an X. You have to stand in place because the cameras are all focused in.
So and you can't move.
You can't I could stand for 90 minutes if I can walk around a little bit. But to stand in place is like physically difficult, especially since we had just spent 2 weeks in our hotel rooms.
Dude, it's brutal. I was in the Army, and they would sometimes make us stand for 2 hours. Granted, it was out in the sun, but I would always tell my friends, like, I would rather go running up hills than stand for 2 hours straight, not being able to move. I hated it.
Yeah, it's tough. So right after we walked out of the tank, I lay down on the floor to stretch a little. And everyone starts saying, like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm okay. I just need to stretch. Like,
I thought you passed out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you must have known, right? Because if you watched all the show and all the episodes, you must have known you're coming in with that valuation. They're probably not going to like it. But generally, from, again, all the episodes I've seen, their investments are like 100K, 300K, 500K. But very rarely do they put in $1 million, let alone 2 million. And it's a lot of kind of like as seen on TV type products, right? But like your product is very cool, techie. So it was very different than what is usually on, and plus what they usually get for the product. Why do you think they were so, I don't know, why do you think you had so much success there?
Yeah, I think we got a little lucky. So we were interested in a deal with Mark Cuban, and the stars aligned with Mark Cuban.
Everyone is, right?
Yeah. Mark Cuban is into veganism and healthy food and healthy living, things that are better for the environment. So the stars aligned for us there. I think that's the first thing that helped us. The second thing that helped us is, I think the size of the opportunity. So the plant-based market is growing, plant-based milk is growing by 20% per year in the US. And that's been for a few years now, and it'll continue and maybe even accelerate. And so I think the investment size and the valuations that they're willing to part with match the opportunity.
Yeah. And for people who may not know or may not have seen the episode, you ended up getting a deal with Mark Cuban, $2 million for 10%, right?
Correct. Yep.
How did that feel?
It felt pretty good.
Surreal?
Yeah. After the fact, we realized that there were other $2 million deals in Shark Tank. And so I was like, oh man, we should have said $2 million and $1.
Really? I don't remember any other 2 million. What other companies made $2 million deals?
There's like some lists. There's some lists online where you can look up like, hey, biggest ever Shark Tank deals. But the more important thing to us,
you're up there.
Oh yeah, we're up there, and it's Mark Cuban's biggest deal ever.
Okay.
And Mark Cuban is in my opinion the most serious investor on the show. He's got a properly staffed VC firm, and I think 82 portfolio investments right now. And so to be able to not just do, a great deal on Shark Tank, but Mark's biggest deal ever, felt really, really good. It felt really good. It felt really validating. And it was especially important to us because we had pivoted during COVID from the grocery kiosk to the countertop. And it was extremely difficult for us during our pitch. I don't know if you picked up on it. I think there were some comments that made it on TV, but we had to walk a really fine tightrope on the pitch because we had the grocery business, which was the past, and the countertop machine, which was the future. And we were smack in the middle of pivoting. We had very few proof points on the countertop machine. Yeah. And so I think Lori made a comment like, hey, you guys are just like, you're middle of switching horses, in the middle of the race. And like, I can't, it's just not for me. Mark saw through that, but we had to walk a really, really fine tightrope during the pitch, balancing the kiosk and the countertop. And it made our job a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. How good, like everyone wants Mark, especially in the later seasons. It seems like, like Kevin will offer something and maybe Damon and let's forget the other guy at the end. Robert, correct. And, people like it, but they're like, I'd like to shop around. But Mark, he comes on and it's like, all right, this is what I'm offering. You got 2 seconds. It's a yes or no. And everyone's like, yes. Like they're into it. I'm always like, he's got this aura around him. Like, maybe he doesn't talk as much as the other sharks, but every word has gravity, has meaning. And when he talks, people are just like, I don't know. What do you think that is? Well, what's that magnetism that he has that perhaps maybe the other sharks that with all their success and all their credibility just maybe lack a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think it's exactly what you just said. And that is Mark doesn't play games. He doesn't talk for the sake of talking or hear himself. He only talks when he has something to say or when he's interested in making a deal. And even in our episode, he was virtually silent for the first 60 or 70 minutes of the episode. Of the pitch. Virtually silent. The only thing he said is, he tried our milk and he drank an entire quart during the course of the show that he had made in the machine. Yeah. And he said it was delicious. Other than that, he was completely silent. And actually, towards the end, Lori, we were clueless because we were getting bombarded with questions and we were trying to manage them politely, but still efficiently. And so we weren't really picking up on cues, nonverbal cues. Lori at the end is like, Mark's been really, really quiet. I'm very curious, what he's thinking. And then she suggested that I make him an offer. And so Lori and I went back and forth a few times, and I was explaining to her that I'm not making him an offer. He should make us an offer, but that aside. And then Damon jumped in. Damon's like, Lori, have you listened to these guys for the last hour? Like, they're not idiots. They're not going to just make offers. Yeah. So then Mark started talking. Then he came in, and then eventually we made the deal with him. But yeah, Mark, I think it's exactly what you said. He doesn't speak frivolously. So when he actually opens his mouth to say something, people give it a little bit more credence. And the other thing is that financially, in the business world, Mark has been the most successful, and he has, I think people are aware on some level that he's the one on the show that has a real VC that he operates, as opposed to making essentially angel investments, which is what the other sharks do.
Yeah, the 3 Comma Club, right? All right, Ari. Congrats on all the success so far. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time today. Where can people find you, and where can they find Numilk? And plug it.
So definitely look us up on social, Numilk on Instagram and Facebook, for whoever still uses Facebook. Sorry to the TikTok users, we're not there yet, but we'll get there soon. And then the best place where to find us is go to our website, numilk.com. There's a great store locator. You can find our Whole Foods locations in the New York area. You can also find a lot of our wonderful coffee shop partners. Foxtrot, we're starting to grow with. They're based out of Chicago. We're in some Blue Bottle coffee shops across the country. We're in Birch in New York City, and other great coffee shops all around the country. We're adding more every single day. We're adding more faster as well. So definitely follow us on social, and definitely look at our website now and in the future if there's nothing near you now.
Guys, go check it out. I promise you, it's the tastiest plant-based milk you'll ever have. Hands down. All right, Ari, thanks so much for your time today, man. I really had a lot of fun.
All right, thanks, Ari. Have a great day. I really appreciate it.
Take care, man.
Take care.